The federal government is actively draining Lake Mead to save Lake Powell upstream. It's a transfer of crisis, not a resolution. One reservoir being sacrificed to keep another running. But here's the detail that tells the real story. This emergency action was born from a miscalculation made 104 years ago, when 7 states signed a contract for more water than the river could ever deliver. That agreement expires December 31st, 2026. No backup plan exists. The cascade of events leading to this moment unfolded with predictable inevitability. In early 2026, Lake Powell crossed a threshold that triggered immediate action. The reservoir was dropping toward the minimum power pool elevation, the level at which Glen Canyon Dam can no longer generate hydroelectric power. The U.S. Bureau of Reclamation faced a choice: allow the upstream dam to shut down or starve the downstream system. They chose the latter. Water releases from Glen Canyon were slashed. The water that normally flows into Lake Mead was diverted upward, stored upstream. This was not a gradual adjustment. It was an abrupt shift in operational protocol, a triage decision made with full knowledge of the consequences downstream. Lake Mead's water level, already precarious at 50 feet above sea level, began accelerating downward. The rate of decline increased. May 2026 brought a revelation. The Bureau's own hydrological models projected the lake could fall below 20 feet by summer 2027. That elevation is dangerously close to the threshold where Hoover Dam loses power generation capacity entirely. The upstream crisis that triggered this response originated decades earlier. The entire Colorado River system was built on a single foundational error. In November 1922, 7 state commissioners gathered in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and signed the Colorado River Compact. The document divided the river's flow between upper basin states, Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, New Mexico, and lower basin states, California, Arizona, Nevada. They allocated 15 million acre-feet of water annually, a number that seemed sustainable. A number derived from water flow data spanning only 2 decades. Those 2 decades were among the wettest 1-200 years in regional hydrological records. They had measured a flood and labeled it normal. The mathematical error was embedded into law, binding for a century. For decades, the error remained concealed. Upper basin states did not consume their full allocation. 2 massive reservoirs, Lake Mead, completed in 1936 behind Hoover Dam, and Lake Powell, completed later behind Glen Canyon Dam, functioned as system buffers. Together, they could store 4 times the river's annual flow. But mathematics cannot be defied indefinitely. As the western population exploded, as millions of acres of agricultural land were irrigated in arid landscapes, withdrawals began exceeding inflows. The savings accounts drained. Then, in 2000, a mega drought emerged, intensified by warming climate systems that have now persisted for 26 years without interruption. The Rocky Mountain snowpack, the river's primary water source, diminished. Demand did not. Pull back and examine where this system exists. The Colorado River Basin spans roughly 240,000 square miles across 7 states and Mexico. It supplies water to 40 million people. The river originates in the San Juan Mountains of Colorado and flows southwest through Utah, Arizona, and California before terminating in Mexico. Lake Mead itself covers 112,000 acres when full. It sits on the Nevada-Arizona border, 30 miles southeast of Las Vegas. Lake Powell lies 300 miles upstream on the Utah-Arizona border. The distance between these 2 reservoirs is critical. Water released from Glen Canyon Dam takes days to reach Mead. Every acre-foot held upstream is an acre-foot delayed downstream. The region these reservoirs serve encompasses agricultural districts, urban centers, and international obligations. The Imperial Irrigation District in California controls vast farmland in the Imperial Valley. The Central Arizona Project Canal carries Mead water to Phoenix and surrounding cities. Mexico, by international treaty, receives 1.5 million acre-feet annually. The economic system dependent on this water is staggering. The Colorado River Basin underpins a regional economy valued at approximately $4 trillion annually. The scale is not regional or interstate, it is continental. The crisis accelerating beneath the surface involves multiple interlocking systems. First, the hydrological reality. Lake Mead is not simply losing water from evaporation and use. Decades of sediment transported by the Colorado River have accumulated on the lake bed. The bottom of the reservoir is rising as silt deposits accumulate. The bathtub is not merely emptying from the top, it is shrinking from the bottom. Storage capacity is declining even as water levels fall. This is a compounding problem. Lower levels mean less water stored, but also less total capacity available. Second, the power generation crisis at Hoover Dam operates on precise engineering thresholds. The dam's hydroelectric turbines require sufficient water pressure from the reservoir behind them. At 1,050 feet elevation, pressure remains adequate. At 1,020 feet, pressure begins degrading. At 950 feet, minimum power pool. The turbines cannot operate. Hoover Dam generates approximately 2,000 megawatts of capacity. This power stabilizes the western grid and provides cheap baseline electricity to 1.3 million people. The loss of this capacity forces utilities to purchase replacement power on open markets at higher cost and often from less clean sources. A grid already stressed by summer heat demand would lose one of its critical shock absorbers. Third, the dead pool threshold represents the point of complete system failure. At 895 feet elevation, water can no longer flow past Hoover Dam via gravity. The concrete intake structures that channel water downstream simply lack sufficient pressure. Below this elevation, the river, for practical purposes, stops. Water that would normally flow to Arizona irrigation districts, to California's agricultural regions, and to Mexico ceases moving. This is not metaphorical. It is the end of the physical system. The consequences of these thresholds are immediate and severe. If Lake Mead drops below 950 feet, Hoover Dam power generation ceases. Utilities across Nevada, Arizona, and Southern California lose a critical power source. Energy costs spike. Grid stability deteriorates. Las Vegas, despite its massive electricity consumption, has paradoxically secured its water future through an engineering project completed in 2015. The Southern Nevada Water Authority built the low lake level pumping station, connected to a 26-foot diameter tunnel called Intake Number 3. This structure sits near the lake bottom and can extract 900 million gallons daily, even if the surface level drops to dead pool. Las Vegas spent $522 million to build itself a survival mechanism. The city will have water. Other regions will not. The Imperial Irrigation District holds the most senior water rights on the Colorado River. These present perfected rights predate the 1922 compact itself. Under the law of the river, agricultural entities receive water before cities. If the system must choose, California farmers irrigating alfalfa crops, often exported internationally, maintain legal entitlement to their allocation before suburban Phoenix neighborhoods receive theirs. This is the brutal hierarchy. Agriculture claims priority over urban residents. When Lake Mead reaches 895 feet and dead pool is imminent, that legal reality becomes operational reality. Farmers in California continue irrigation. Taps in Phoenix suburbs run dry. The federal decision to hoard water upstream in Lake Powell was intended as a short-term emergency measure. Instead, it accelerated Mead's decline toward the critical thresholds. The calculation was flawed, saving one dam by hastening another toward failure. Now the entire system approaches a simultaneous crisis point. Lake Powell itself remains unstable. Lake Mead accelerates downward. The deadline of December 31, 2026 approaches with no agreement among the 7 states. Negotiators remain deadlocked. The upper basin states refuse mandatory cuts, citing natural drought limitations. The lower basin demands shared sacrifice. California, defended by its senior agricultural rights, holds an unbreakable legal position. Arizona faces the most painful reductions as the most junior user. Nevada, having engineered its escape through Intake Number 3, watches from relative security. On June 3, 2026, the Bureau of Reclamation signed a Memorandum of Understanding to explore artificial water creation, large-scale ocean desalination plants, and advanced wastewater purification. These are solutions for 2040, not for the crisis of 2027. They require years to build and billions in capital. No new water exists now. Only the diminishing reserves remain. If no agreement emerges before the deadline, the federal government may impose its own solution, triggering years of multi-state litigation. If it does nothing, the lakes continue toward dead pool under a legal framework everyone acknowledges is obsolete. The question facing the Colorado River system is fundamentally structural. Can a water allocation contract designed in 1922 for an agrarian society function in a 21st century urban West experiencing climate-driven drought? The mathematics suggest no. The law suggests yes. Between those two realities, 40 million people await an answer that no one has yet provided. The water continues dropping. The deadline continues approaching. The system continues moving toward a state that remains unmapped and unprecedented. What occurs on January 1st, 2027 will determine whether the Southwest transitions to a sustainable framework or enters the first day of a collapse that was 1 century in the making. 3 questions remain unanswered. How will the 7 states resolve their deadlock before the legal framework expires? Will the federal government intervene forcefully, and if so, what litigation follows? And most critically, if Lake Mead reaches dead pool, Will the emergency engineering solutions and legal hierarchies actually function as designed, or will the system fail in ways no model has predicted?